Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. Folks, I'm back in New York. I returned from Florida yesterday and been off the air for a couple of days, but so much has happened in the case of Bryan Kohberger. And so much, 23 cell phone pings in the vicinity of 1122 King Road, disturbing Google searches, new revelations in the Idaho killings. We have been telling you this all along, that we felt that the prosecution has much more evidence that has been revealed. Everyone was sticking to those court documents with the discovery. Oh, this is all they have. They have no case. Trust me, they have even more evidence than they have yet to reveal. So when we look at some of the Dateline NBC, what they've revealed, and I'm sure that's just a smidgen of what the prosecution has. So when the prosecution finally puts their full case forward, I think there is no doubt that Bryan Kohberger is going to get convicted in this case. And I know we take heat for that. He's innocent until proven guilty. I know that. But as former LA District Attorney Matt Murphy said about a year and a half ago, he said the evidence in this case is overwhelming. It's overwhelming. And I feel that way. I felt that way from the beginning, and I still feel that way. So we're going to cover this case, give you a smidgen today. And tonight at 9 o'clock, we're going to do a deeper dive into this case. So right now, hold on to your hats, hold on to your loved ones. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone.
There has to be some common sense.
They were the ones who called 911 to get him help, and now they're calling for change.
And now a word from our sponsor. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. Baseball season is in full swing, and we're into the NBA and the NHL playoffs, and BetOnline has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting while the games are being played. With the largest selection of odds on everything from Major League Baseball, NBA, NHL, and UFC, BetOnline remains the best online source for all your sports wagering info. In between games, head over to the BetOnline Casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. BetOnline, the game starts here. Who better to join me today and dissect a little bit of this case but retired NYPD Sergeant, professor at Albertus Magnus College in Connecticut, attorney. Welcome to the show, Professor Mike Geary. Welcome, Mike.
Bill, good morning. Good to see you. Good to see you. Glad you're back in New York.
Yeah, I felt a little bit like a fish out of water when we didn't do a case right away, but and especially when this came out. But I was busy on 95 North traveling up that highway, and listening to podcasts myself. I listen to so much Joe Rogan. I know all the commercials that he does, so. But anyway, a lot of things have come out. Of course, look, Dateline NBC, they have a huge budget. They have a lot more power than we have. Some things were leaked to them, obviously. For example, the 23 cell phone pings in the vicinity of 1122 King Road, his disturbing Google searches, and just some of the revelations in how and the order in which he killed these young people. But the 23 cell phone pings, that's pretty damn disturbing, Mike. And what we said right from the beginning, and again, I hate to do the I told you so's, he was doing what we call in law enforcement as a reconnaissance. He was making sure that he crossed his T's and dotted his I's so that on game day, the day he decided to do this horrific crime, there would be no questions unanswered that he hadn't already checked out. He hadn't done rehearsals for, And then when you think of the defense that, oh, yes, he loves to take rides at 4 in the morning in sub-zero weather and hike at that time. I mean, just preposterous, ridiculous, I think. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Billy, the idea that he wants to go out late at night looking at stars, that's one thing, like if it's, August or September, but we're talking about like November, and we're talking about a cloudy, snowy, cold day. And the idea that there was 23 pings, and we knew there was numerous ones. We weren't exactly sure of the exact number, but we knew that his cell phone pinged in the neighborhood of 1122 King Road, not within a distance of like, say, 10 miles either way, like in a big circular pattern, but no, within just a couple of 100 yards of that area. He was even given a ticket at one point earlier in the fall for a traffic infraction at that near that location late in the evening. And so it appears from what we know so far, what has been leaked is that they've gone through his phone and looked at all of the locations, looked at all the times, matched them up with times and dates and locations. And it really does look like he'd started doing reconnaissance in that area, probably maybe in September or October. And he did it over the course of a number of weeks. That is reconnaissance. Because, if he had a friend in that location, like that lived around the block and they were visiting, you would have had that person's name and that phone number and address by now. But with the silence from the defense on this, that's reconnaissance. That's all that is.
Absolutely. Let me play this short clip.
More than 2 years since the tragic deaths of Madison Mogen, Kaylee Gonzalez, Xana Kernodle, and Conway native Ethan Chapin. And as we get closer to Bryan Kohberger's trial date, we're also learning new details about what led up to his arrest. That includes video and digital evidence that investigators say track Kohberger's movements from the night of the murders. Dateline spoke with former students as well as the victims' friends who are now opening up for the first time about their interactions with Kohberger.
The wording of the text as I look back on it is kind of peculiar. It was almost overly formal. I really enjoy that activity. So, can you follow up with me about that?
You can watch the 2-hour Dateline special, The Terrible Night on King Road on King 5, beginning tonight at 9 o'clock.
So this is what everyone has been talking about, the Dateline special, and that they did a great job. But some of the information, obviously, that they got was released to a network TV station. But so much of this information and more the prosecution has. So it's almost like an eye-opener to the public and an eye-opener to anyone who has been following this case. Yet, as we said early on, the prosecution has much more, much, much more. And for the people, the highly critical people that follow this case, that say the touch DNA left behind on the knife sheath doesn't mean anything. I mean, they shouldn't follow true crime if they think that. Absolutely ridiculous. That is such a powerful piece of evidence. And that is the piece of evidence that, of course, gave probable cause to the police to make the arrest. And then they found other things, like Bryan Kohberger at his home in Pennsylvania, getting rid of garbage and searching through the garbage at 4 o'clock in the morning with gloves on and throwing his garbage into his neighbor's garbage can. Circumstantial? Yeah, you bet, but pretty damn strong circumstantial evidence.
Yeah, Bill, every defense attorney is going to say, oh, DNA doesn't mean anything. We saw this in the Rex Sherman case. The attorney's like, what is this genetic genealogy DNA? Is this stuff really reliable? Every defense attorney has to do that. They have to try that. That's their job. But, in the beginning, we had just little tidbits. Now we had little chapters, because now the prosecution is responding to all these suppression motions, evidence suppression motions. Now we have a lot more of the whole entire trial book opened up for us. And this is just an amazing amount of information. And, the balaclava, the possession of the balaclava, the possession of the knife, the possession of the I'm trying to think what else he had there. I'm sorry, the Dickie kind of suit. I couldn't think of the proper term for it. The Dickie kind of suit that he purchased earlier, and we know that because we have receipts of that. All of these little tidbits, they're all little pieces. They're all circumstantial evidence. Not each one individually doesn't directly point to him, but you line them all up and you give that to a jury, and you give the dates and the times that these things were purchased or used or discovered. It tells a story, and we're getting so much more now. And so it's fantastic. And I think that this is the kind of thing that will convince the jury beyond a reasonable doubt that Bryan Kohberger is the guy who slayed these 4 poor young people.
You know, Mike, one of the things that I found, and that wasn't surprising to me, but I found very disturbing, is that they're finding personality traits of a serial killer. That this dude, Kohberger, is a sick bastard. He is a real sick individual. And his obsession with Ted Bundy, to the point that he was Google searching Ted Bundy, and they found all these searches on his computer. In fact, I'm going to play a little clip of this. This is extremely disturbing to me, and I think to everyone else that follows this.
Suspect Bryan Kohberger's internet activities have come to light. The 30-year-old, who has been accused of fatally stabbing University of Idaho students Madison Mogen, Kaylee Gonzalez, Xana Kernodle, and her boyfriend Ethan Chapin in November of 2022, was active on Google in the weeks before and after the killings, according to records from Kohberger's phone in the possession of law enforcement obtained by Dateline. In addition to searches on infamous serial killer Ted Bundy, the records indicate Kohberger made online inquiries for pornography with the words, quote, forced, passed out, drugged, and sleeping, per the phone data. But that's not the only activity discovered by law enforcement on his cell phone. In court documents, authorities said they found a selfie of Kohberger, quote, taken from his phone on November 13th, 2022, only hours after the homicides at 10:31 a.m. In the photo, which was attached to the filing, Kohberger, dressed in a button-down shirt and with Bluetooth earbuds in, stood in front of what appeared to be a shower as he smiled at the camera and held up a thumbs up. And according to the court documents, the state intends to introduce the image of Kohberger because of the witness, who was only identified as DM, says she saw a male in the student's home wearing a ski mask that only revealed his nose and eyes. She also told police she remembered his, quote, bushy eyebrows. According to docs, the state also intends to share Kohberger's driver's license, which lists him as 6 feet tall, to compare against the witness's description of, quote, male, white, skinny athletic build, a few inches taller than DM, who stands at 5'10", not someone she knew, with bushy eyebrows. The statement reads, quote, whether or not Bryan Kohberger can be described as having bushy eyebrows is a factual determination to be decided by the jury.
So I believe that shows for the first time personality traits that we didn't necessarily see in the courtroom by this, sort of studious mannequin-like individual sitting next to Ann Taylor and the other attorneys and, just sitting up straight. And now when we see what he was Googling, what he was searching, his obsession with Ted Bundy. And look, I'm sure the defense could come up with a defense for that. Oh, he's a criminologist. He naturally wants to search and find out. And look, he studied with Catherine Ramsland. So this is natural for him. But there's more. There's more. In the summer of 2022, he was invited to a pool party near Washington State University. And many people felt his behavior was quite creepy. In fact, it was reported in Dateline that he was fixated on 2 women in bikinis, inappropriately fixated on them. And the women who he was fixated on were creeped out by it also. So that shows a little bit of well, for lack of a better word, a creepy personality, Mike.
Yeah, Billy, he doesn't know how, in a way, to really fit in with people. He creeps people out. He has a strange affect. It's not a warm affect. It's not an endearing affect. It's not an attractive affect. And whatever body signals and he gives off with his language and his manners, it alarms people. And so therefore, that is a trait that sociopaths have, that they can try and imitate genuine warmth and affection and interest, but they really don't. Ted Bundy, people talk about him having a kind of a warm personality, but most of the time, people who are sociopathic are imitating how they see other people acting because they want to fit in very badly. If it wasn't for the four homicides, you'd feel sorry for the guy because he's going to go through life in a very awkward way. But everybody is somewhat alarmed by this guy, and it's a really constant kind of thing that he makes. Wherever he goes, he makes people uneasy, and it's just one more little thing that you just put in the back of your mind when you're a juror. His search history, he could play that off by saying, look, I am a doctoral degree pursuer, and here I am studying these people, and I'm fascinated by crime, and that is fine. One of the other things I see, it's very telling, is the pictures, the selfies he takes. He takes a number of selfies, and they are on his cell phone. That one is great because of the date and the timestamp. It's perfect. Some of the others, he's wearing dark hood, and his face is covered partly, and you're sitting there wondering, why would a person take a selfie like this? Is he preparing for an attack to see what a victim might see if they look at him? How much does he have to cover himself up? So I'm guessing, and this is just a guess, he's trying to figure out what a victim would see if he was going to attack them. How much does he need to cover himself up and lose the features of his face? And that's why I think the balaclava comes in, because the balaclava covers just about everything that you can possibly cover except his eyes. But
Mike,
this
picture here, the one we see on the screen with him having a hoodie up, it almost looks like the Grim Reaper. And
yes,
we've also seen pictures of the Grim Reaper.
Mm-hmm.
And then with that, I think there's additional photos of him wearing that hoodie up, as well as like a balaclava hood underneath it, which shows an intention of not being identified.
That's right.
So I was almost going to say consciousness of guilt, but really it was an attempt with not getting caught by covering himself up. So it shows premeditation, that he was trying to get away with this crime, because had he gotten away with this crime, he was not finished.
No.
He's known as an alleged mass killer right now, but I believe, and I think many experts believe, that he would have become a serial killer. There's no doubt to me. He was looking for the notoriety. He's got that psychological creepiness. He was crossing his T's and dotting his I's. He was reconning. And this next, you're going to see Banfield from News Nation. He had students' pictures on his phone.
Mm-hmm.
So do we know whether or not he had any of the Idaho 4, Madison Mogen, Ethan Chapin, Kaylee Gonzalez, or Zaina Knodel in his pictures? We don't know. But there's this distinct possibility he did, because why did he target them? And again, this could be evidence that the prosecution has that has yet to be released. Let's listen to Ashley Banfield.
Steve Gonzalez, father of Kaylee Gonzalez, who was one of the 4 kids murdered inside 1122 King Road. Steve, there's a lot of blockbuster revelations by NBC. One of the ones I found so upsetting was the allegation that these are pictures of University of Idaho girls on Bryan Kohberger's phone. Do you have any idea if Kaylee was among them?
I don't know. I find it very telling that there was other students that are supposed to be in their friend circles that are on that phone for sure.
And do you know anything more about what that mother, Angela Naveja's, with the daughter Ashlyn, who was best friends with Maddie, do you know anything more about that child's story? I mean, that girl's story. You know, Ashlyn was supposed to spend the night there. It's just so upsetting to think what happened. Why didn't she?
I don't know the details on Ashlyn. I definitely know Ashlyn. I've met and hung out with her. We've done fundraisers together, and her mother. So, yeah, I know that she spent. You know, she used to be a roommate there. So, I'm a little surprised at how that night, but I'm not surprised that she would be over there and hanging out with the girls at all.
Boy, have you had a chance to talk with her since the revelation that she was supposed to be there and wasn't and decided not to be?
No, and I just heard that she doesn't want to come back to Idaho, and now I've got a daughter who's going to Texas for college now, so I kind of understand how it feels for some of these side victims, that how they feel like they just don't feel safe and they want to just run, you know, get out of the area. So her saying that is kind of rang true with our daughter.
The internet search is alleged to be, you know, Ted Bundy and then non-consensual violent sex. You've said that this stands out because of reports before from the Reddit survey that Bryan Kohberger sent out, you know, as a criminology student, asking other criminals about their methods. Talk to me more about that.
Yeah, we got a letter and it had a phone number in there, and we called this individual, and he said he had been interviewed by Bryan, and he got the sense that Bryan was getting off on his story, and his story was basically he'd listen to a police scanner, wait for somebody to call the police on a domestic violence type thing, and then the male would be arrested, and then he would go into those neighborhoods, and that would be the house that he would rob. So he said that Bryan seemed to enjoy his story, and he said that he had some kind of, he felt like he started enjoying certain aspects of his story where he would talk about drunk females passed out, and he basically said, I could have done anything. I was just going for jewelry, going for money, going for whatever he was. But Bryan would call him back repeatedly and want to know more details on that story.
It's all just so upsetting. And I know we're getting closer and closer to this trial where we will hear actual evidence as opposed to reports. Steve, thank you for that. I also want to let our audience, Steve, know that your family has to travel upwards of 8 hours to be at the trial of Bryan Kohberger, and it's expected to last for months. So, folks, a friend of the Gonzalez family has set up a GoFundMe to help them make that repeated travel. It's called Help Kaylee Gonzalez's Family Attend Trial.
So, you know, Steve Gonzalez has been solid through this whole thing. I really admire the man. I think he's super strong emotionally to be able to get through something like this and to be able to stand up and see this whole thing through. And he does intend to attend the trial with his family. Just so horrific. And he is sort of the face of the families of the Idaho Four, you know, Kaylee Gonzalez, Ethan Chapin, Madison Mogen, and I always forget the last one, Zana Canodal. He's sort of the face of those four and the spokesperson, whether they wanted him to be or not. He is the face out there. And I think he's a extremely strong man. The other thing that, and we'll cover it tonight at 9 o'clock when we get more in depth to this, they have video of the car, even better pictures, and a much more detailed timeline, and just fascinating. So again, as we've said, circumstantial evidence, but start piling this circumstantial evidence up. I think that since we've been covering this case, I must have said that 1,000 times, Mike. Circumstantial evidence piled high on top of each other is so, so powerful.
Billy, circumstantial evidence is as powerful as any sort of direct evidence. People will say, oh, there's no direct evidence of his guilt. Okay, fine. Direct evidence, we know it's very limited. Circumstantial evidence, DNA is circumstantial evidence. Blood stains, fingerprints, video, all of that is blood stains. Car registration, car ownership, purchases on Amazon, dress of the possible perpetrator, eyebrows, All of these things are circumstantial evidence, and they are powerful, powerful pieces of evidence that point to guilt. And in this case, would be considered guilt. Therefore, anyone who derides the prosecution's amount of evidence, I hope at this point, after what we've gotten to know so far, very, very, very recently, that it looks like the prosecution, and you see, the prosecutor there with this big beard, he's very serene. He seems to have all the cards he needs. He's playing the cards one by one to oppose the defense. He's very, very confident. There's Bill Thompson right there. Bill Thompson. He knows what he's doing. He's got a great case. Therefore, he's very confident. He should be very confident, because if they only have half as much evidence that they have not uncovered yet as they have covered, this is just an amazing avalanche of bits and pieces of circumstantial evidence that the jury now has to consider.
Mike, when you look at these pictures here, and of course that's very telling, the selfie taken at 10:31 hours on November 13th, 2022, which is, of course, the morning of the murders.
Mm-hmm.
The murders, they believe, happened between 04:10 and 04:25, I think it was.
Yeah.
Very, very scary that here he is taking sort of a celebratory photograph that he can remember. And that's what we call in this business of serial killers or murderers as a trophy, because he wants to look back at that. And then even creepier, this picture. It appears to be like the Grim Reaper. That is another photograph that is, I believe, quite disturbing. And, what is his psyche? What is his psychological background? He's disturbed. He's an actually disturbed individual. Look at his history. I mean, he was a heroin addict. At some point, he lost 100 pounds. I have no doubt that early on, that when they were saying he was an incel, I believe that is exactly what he is. An involuntarily celibate, sick individual. So everyone can tune in tonight. We're going to go in much more depth this evening at 9 p.m. I'm going to attempt to get a special guest. I'm not going to say if she's going to make it yet, but I would love to have a psychological expert on the show just to sort of get into his head a little bit. Mike, your final thoughts.
Anyone who doubts the prosecution's case, don't doubt it anymore. They have rock solid evidence. He enjoys the presumption of innocence. However, there's an awful lot of circumstantial evidence that we don't even know yet that may lead to his conviction in a court of law.
100%. Folks, so tune in tonight. Myself, Professor Mike Geary, we're going to do a deep dive in some of the new evidence into the Kohberger case, the Idaho 4 case, the 23 cell phone pings, the disturbing Google searches, his obsession with Ted Bundy. We'll do a little deeper dive tonight. So 9 o'clock this evening, we'll see you on Police Off the Cuff. Have a great day, everyone, and God bless.
One episode just ain't enough.